The iPhone XS, released in 2018, was the follow-up to the 2017 iPhone X, which was a pretty popular flagship phone. The iPhone X was notable for many reasons, some of which being that it normalized a $1,000 phone. It entered the iPhone into the modern era of Face ID and bezel-less designs. The XS was a little different, as it released alongside the cheaper but somehow still feature-packed iPhone XR. In this video, I want to see whether or not the iPhone XS is still worth buying, and I'll also go into the various issues I've encountered over the years while dealing with this phone. The iPhone XS's biggest upgrade was the A12 processor, which is showing its age in 2024, as a lot of apps will take longer to load. Certain iOS menus are slower than something a bit newer, like an iPhone 12, and the general experience is just a lot worse on iOS 16 than I'd expect. It's not unusable, but it generally isn't something that I'd want to be stuck on for day-to-day usage going into the future. The phone itself looks great, although this phone actually started Apple's design trend of making non-uniform speaker grills, which I still wish that they would reverse. But it's made out of glass and stainless steel, and it's a nice looking phone overall, especially in the space gray color. But the design is mostly the same as the iPhone X, with extremely similar dimensions to the point where an iPhone XS will actually fit in an iPhone X case. The screen is about the same as the iPhone X also. More info on the issues of this display later in the video, but this was the last iPhone to support 3D Touch, which was a feature that Apple released in 2015. 3D Touch was replaced by Haptic Touch in 2019, and while 3D Touch was only a little faster, I haven't missed 3D Touch on any of my recent iPhones. The screens are actually so similar that an iPhone X screen will actually work on an iPhone XS, although the internal frame is slightly different, so they don't properly interchange. The battery life on the iPhone XS is another major downside. These phones have always had a pretty unfortunate battery life. The iPhone XR lasted much longer than the XS, mostly due to its less intensive display, and the iPhone 11 series gave the iPhone a massive leap in battery life. The iPhone X never had the longest battery runtime in the beginning, so the iPhone XS always performed pretty bad on battery life. The XS Max is mostly the same, although there is a bigger issue relating to battery life. iOS 16 and more recently iOS 17 both did a number on this phone's battery life. These phones must not be properly optimized for the newer iOS versions. The battery life just doesn't last. Even my XS Max with 100% battery health can't last 4 hours on battery life. These phones definitely aren't worth it for anyone looking for a long-lasting battery. Another thing to note about these phones is that they do support fast charging, although they do get stuck at 80% while charging due to overheating. And mentioning overheating, that is one of the major flaws with this phone. These things will overheat a lot to the point where every iPhone XS series device that I've had actually overheats really quickly. I don't know what it is about these phones, but they seriously can't stay cool. They also lag a lot when they get warm, and this is a major problem with this phone. This iPhone supports LTE, and there are some issues here as well. The baseband of this phone is known to randomly fail, leaving it impossible to connect to any cellular network. This issue is usually caused from heat, but it could also be caused from a even light impact. But I've also seen some issues with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on these phones from similar issues. On the brighter side, the iPhone XS series and the XRs even were the first iPhones to support eSIM, and with that, it can support dual SIM with a single physical SIM and a single eSIM. The iPhone XS also has a dual camera system, which actually isn't half bad. I will give it that. The colors are actually really nice to look at, and the detail is about normal for a phone of this era. The telephoto camera is pretty good overall, I'd say as well. I actually really like the telephoto camera from this era of iPhones. I will note that the X's camera is about the same, just a little worse, and the 11 series did a major camera overhaul, which made the cameras a lot better. The cameras can't really compare to any recent iPhone, but they're not awful. I did have an iPhone XS with a line through the telephoto camera about 2 years ago, but I'd assume a simple camera replacement would fix that. The average iPhone XS sale price on eBay is $167, and for that price, I've compiled a list of phones that I'd recommend to buy over the iPhone XS. I'm going to try and make this quick. 1. iPhone 11. The iPhone 11 can be found comfortably for around $200. For this price, the phone is much better. It has an overall better camera system, although it has a wide-angle camera instead of a telephoto camera. It's got much longer battery runtime, a newer and more powerful processor, and it's a lot more reliable. 2. iPhone XR. The iPhone XR can be found for closer to $130, so it is a cheaper phone, and while it's technically got worse specs than the XS, it's much more reliable and the battery runtime is longer. 3. iPhone SE 2. The SE2 may have an old and outdated design, and while I usually would recommend against this phone, it's a much more reliable option with a more powerful processor, and it can be found for closer to $120. I made an entire video on the SE2, I'd recommend checking it out. For iPhone 12, the 12 is a little more expensive, selling for around $250, but it's a much better device than the iPhone XS. It's got a more powerful processor, 5G, an overall better camera system, a better display, and longer battery runtime. These phones are a pretty good value in 2024. 5. Google Pixel 6 or 6 Pro. The Pixel 6 line is from 2021, and these phones feature a much more powerful processor, much newer and nicer design, and much longer battery runtime. And the Pixel 6 sells for around $150, while the 6 Pro goes for around $200. These phones are better than the iPhone XS in every way, although they run Android instead of iOS, and in my opinion, the iPhone X design looks a little better than the Pixel 6 Pro. 6. Samsung Galaxy S21. The Galaxy S21 series was released in 2021, and they're also an upgrade compared to the iPhone XS in every way. Regarded as one of the best Galaxy lineups ever from the golden age of Samsung Galaxy S phones, it's easy to find an S21 or an S21 Plus for less than $180, and they're pretty powerful devices with a lot of nice-to-have features. The camera system and displays are going to be much better than the iPhone XS, and I'd recommend this phone to anyone in this price range who is fine with using an Android. So now that I've went over all of these phones that I'd recommend to buy instead of the iPhone XS, I can say that the iPhone XS is definitely not worth buying in 2024 due to everything I've mentioned and also the value. $167 for a used, nearly 6-year-old phone is really too much, and the unfortunate fact of the matter is that this phone is really unreliable, and it can fail at any point in time, and honestly, that's not the type of phone I'd like to rely on for my daily device. Mentioning my iPhone XS video that I made in 2022. I stand by every point I made in that video, although I don't exactly stand by the approach I took while making that video. There's a lot of things that I wish I did different in that video, but it is a 20-minute video pretty much documenting why I think the iPhone XS was the worst iPhone of all time. I would recommend people to check it out. But with that said, thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, a like would be appreciated, and if you want to subscribe for more content, I'd appreciate that too. With that said, thank you for watching, and goodbye.